our theological convictions, and missional calling. As I quote this General Secretary, he said, "The office of the General Secretary of Conference is the nerve center of the operational activities of the church as it is entrusted with the following." He outlined several areas that he believed that the office, as he saw it at the time, actually entailed the following. Firstly, he saw that office as an office where we need to ensure the integrity of our connectional character. He saw this office as holding the connection together, sustaining unity in diversity, exercising executive powers on legal matters in conjunction with the presiding bishop. Secondly, he saw it as convening, coordinating, and imagining connectional activities, such as conference, the connectional executive, connectional committees, unit leaders, and tax teams, official correspondent of the church, acting as an ex-official member of all connectional structures, and also maintaining the connectional diary. Also saw it as championing connectional projects, like the Methodist heritage, leadership development, resourcing for mission or operations in collaboration with the General Treasurer. Second point, he saw it as tracking and analyzing emerging trends, their immediate and future impact and implications, reading and interpreting the signs of the time, interrogating and analyzing the statistical return in church, reimagining church from conversations. Another point, by identifying critical governance issues, facilitating and coordinating mutual accountability and teamwork, review, standardize, and simplify processes, systems, and structures, role clarification, improve efficiency, turnaround time, meet set, informed decision-making, proper record keeping and archiving, preserving institutional memory, coordinating, and accountability. He also saw it as a space of ensuring alignment to the vision and mission of the church, by assisting districts, organizations, and units, adherence to the mission imperatives and the transformation calls and the platform of work, enforcing compliance to the polity and doctrine, internal consultant to constitutional matters, consultancy services to bishops, second stewards, and general membership of the church, custodian of doctrines, disciplinary procedures, connectional documents, patterns, and etc., publication of the yearbook, and also the book of order, acting as a connectional electoral officer, and at times a connectional registrar of marriages, monitoring implementation of conference or connectional executive directives and resolutions, cascade connectional directives, follow up on implementation and compliance, nurturing relationships and partnerships with the bishops, unit leaders, the bishop, the clergy, the general membership, local and international partners, executing pastoral responsibilities, participating in ceremonial events, looking after ministers' well-being, offering support and counseling, carrying the cross of leadership, close quote. This reflection conference draws from over 5 years of service in the office of the General Secretary, grounded in both lived experience and the guiding principles of the Book of Order. It has been a valuable exercise in revisiting the expectations of the office, assessing its capacity to meet those expectations, and calling for intentional space and opportunity to fulfill this responsibility. This is not merely a retrospective, it is a call to action. We must continuously monitor and evaluate the office to ensure it remains aligned with our Wesleyan heritage, theology, polity, and missional commitments. In terms of our statistics and the trends that one sees and their impact on the life of the church. As we gather once again, the church is represented with a vital opportunity to pause and take stock of its impact over the past decade, particularly since 2016 Mission Congress. Among the many areas of reflection, evangelization ministry stands out, especially when viewed through the lens of our statistical data. The Pilgrimage of Renewal and the Mission Congress 2025 have provided platforms for introspection. They invite us to ask, what do our members say about our identity as an alternative community? Are we truly crossing to the other side in mission and witness? Statistics, as Bishop Mokhotu said some time ago, that statistics are not just liberations. Adherence to our established stationing procedures and recognitions of their legislation procedures and recognitions of their legislative nature are vital to the church's renewal. However, misconceptions surrounding stations persist and must be addressed through ongoing dialogue across various church platforms. The circuits should be serious about their profiling, and the ministers must also submit their own profiles. Many of our challenges in the local church emanate from mismatch. We must ask ourselves these questions. How do we ensure that stations are handled with dignity, respect, and confidentiality? How can we guarantee that the process remains fair, just, and inclusive? The current challenges in stationing call for a comprehensive review of our processes to ensure that they reflect the values and mission of the church. Legal and disciplinary matters. Since assuming office earlier this year, I've been inundated with a backlog of disciplinary and legal cases from multiple districts. This troubling trend highlights a breakdown in our traditional methods of conflict resolutions within local churches and districts. While conflict is inevitable in any Christian community, the manner in which we address it is crucial to the health of the church and the individuals involved. There appears to be a widespread misunderstanding regarding Chapter 11 and its application in many situations. A thorough review of the current legal framework is necessary to address critical gaps and ambiguities within our statutes. We must acknowledge the broader context in which we operate, marked by secularization, globalization, and democratic engagement. If we fail to strengthen our legal and disciplinary mechanisms, our processes will be increasingly challenged and scrutinized. This conference will be asked to look at some of the proposals that the Revisions Committee had to look at based on the challenges we have been confronted with. Methodist people have developed a style of laying a complaint to the DDR on anything. The spirit of fellow believers seeking any ways of resolving conflict and misunderstanding through guided pastoral conversation is no longer applied. Laws and discipline. As noted again in the 2024 Secretary's report, the publication of the 13th edition of the new Book of Order was scheduled for completion by the end of 2024 connectional year. Unfortunately, unforeseen challenges delayed this important work. The good news is that we are doing our best as the revisions committee, as the PBO, and all those involved. And I must also say to this conference that we have also even sourced the wisdom and the experience of our DDRs and DDCs in just assisting us in making sure that as we move forward, especially with Chapter 11, we do so having taken into consideration what they are experiencing on the ground. So the good news is that the journey towards finalization will culminate after this very conference that we are in. I want to take this opportunity, Presiding Bishop, to extend a heartfelt gratitude to the former General Secretary, the Reverend Michelle Hansrod, for his dedication and perseverance, and for his dedication and perseverance, and to the other former General Secretary of our church in the name of the Reverend Charmaine Morgan. And also just to say as well that I want to say to this conference that I want to give thanks to God for the role that even there at the office, Vanessa has been playing. It has cost her some sleepless nights. Now it looks like PB, I'm missing a page. And you know what, when that happens, you get this very much disorganized. Between 14 and 15, there is something missing there. But maybe what I need to do, let me move on, and you will get maybe God is saying to me, not that one. Let them read it on their own when they get the report. Because the numbering is correct here, but the page is not there. Let me just speak on the picture of the church as one sees it. Leadership, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the lay president has spoken on that, and the PB has touched on that yesterday as well. Across the board, Methodist people, 135th Conference, we face a significant challenge in cultivating quality and technical leadership within the church. This is evident in the recurring difficulties we encounter as we travel across the connection, and in numerous complaints received daily. Leadership concerns are not confined to the macro level. They permeate every layer, from class leaders to circuit leadership. We must recognize the urgent need to invest in leadership development with a focus on integrity, accountability, and spiritual maturity at all levels. The ordained ministry. The order of presbyters is facing serious and persistent challenges. Issues such as moral lapse, disciplinary concerns, diminished respect for the vocation, yawning commitment to the church, disregard for the code of conduct, and a lack of accountability are increasingly prevalent. These concerns cannot be ignored. Intentional and honest conversations must take place during clergy convocations. And I want to plead that this should actually begin as in the coming year. If you fail to address these issues decisively, we risk undermining the very foundation of quality ministry in the MCSA. We need also to look under leadership at the issue of talent management and ministry development. The absence of a structured system to identify, nurture, and develop talent, giftedness, and calling for specific roles within the church has created a vacuum, one that allows individuals to assume leadership without adequate preparation and discernment. We must become more intentional about ministry development. A robust talent management framework is essential to ensure that those called to serve are equipped, supported, and held to the highest standards of excellence. The Mission Resource Fund. I'm raising this intentionally because it is linked also to stationing. This fund, the Mission Resource Fund, was established by the MCSA to support the creation of new ministries and to ignite what we called at the time discipleship communities. Its purpose is not to rescue struggling circuit or to perpetuate unsustainable ones. The purpose of the fund is not intended to clear assessment areas or to place ministers without appointments into stations. The church already has regulations in place to assist circuits facing such challenges. What we need now is a shift in mindset, encouragingly and courageously, rather than relying on outdated approaches of looking for a rear-view mirror for too long. One example is our attempt to introduce chaplaincy in institutions of higher learning. You remember, we tried it. If I'm not mistaken, it was at NMMU. We tried it at University of Johannesburg. We tried it at Wits. We tried it at the University of Pretoria. We had workshops to try and just make sure that this worked. But it didn't last 3 years. And it disappeared. But the truth is, even though that initiative did not last, the need still remains. School is widely used by institutions to communicate, to promote, and connect with society. The MCSA has demonstrated its potential in using media platforms to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ for healing and transformation, and to empower many through webinars and digital gatherings. During COVID-19 pandemic, social media helped to keep the Methodist family united. At the Mission Congress, it enabled voices from across the connection to be heard. Even those who could not be physically present in Benoni, social media allowed them an opportunity to express their voices and for the church to hear them. It allowed them to discern, wrestle, and prepare together as a family. Yet this same tool has also harmed our image and reputation. Sadly, the damage often comes from within, and the damage comes from both lay and clergy. The things we say about ourselves, the lifestyles we portray, and the insult we exchange have made us a source of ridicule in the ecumenical circles and the communities we live in. Most troubling is when we celebrate the pain of others. Our social media policy is frequently ignored and disrespected. I urge the Methodist people to engage in a conversation about what it means to be a follower of Jesus in the digital spaces. We need a platform to remind one another that discipleship means reflecting the values of the MCSA wherever we are, in whatever we do. Again, just a reminder of what was said last year, the 50 years of women's ordination. Next year in 2026, the MCSA will celebrate the Golden Jubilee of the ordination of women ministers, a remarkable milestone, making 50 years of women in ministry. This celebration must be more than just ceremonial. It should be a year of intentional encouragement for women to offer themselves for ministry. It must also be a year of capacity building, where we actively prepare across the church for leadership roles in both church and society context. The division and multiplication of districts. Clarkbury. Following the 2024 conference report, the district proceeded with its elective synods, during which the proposed shape of the division was formally endorsed. Nominations for district officers were submitted for endorsement and processing by the main synod. In parallel, the district youth synod elected office bearers for the respective new districts, also subject to the approval of the main synod. Similarly, at district level, organizations conducted their elections following the same process for the synod endorsement. Provisional dates have been set for the induction of bishops, dependent on conference approval of those nominations. Work remains ongoing regarding the divisions of the district assets, both movable and immovable. The connection is actively collaborating with the district to facilitate the process, with the aim of finalizing it as soon as possible to ensure smooth transition. The multiplications of districts. The conference will recall that a 3-year moratorium was placed on the multiplication of districts. This moratorium is set to conclude at the end of next year. In anticipation, the Structures Committee has initiated preparations to resume conversations around district multiplication. These discussions are intended to support the church's readiness and to re-engage with regions where conversations had previously reached advanced stages. As I'm about to conclude, PB, just to indicate to this conference that we have celebrations of our heritage that we have not really given attention to, and also we have not even spent a moment just to say, this is how far God has been with us since this. If I'm not mistaken, the Cape of Good Hope will agree with me that next year marks 210 years since the start of our first mission station at the Cape. The Eastern Cape with William Shaw. You will recall that in 1825, it was the year in which Chief Kama received the Lord. So next year it will be 200 years of the one whom that district is named after gave his life to Christ. You would recall, I think PB did make mention of that in Namibia, in 1822, Reverend James Archbell and Jacob Link started a station at Walvis Bay. In 1834, Rev. Edward Cook started at Warmbad, and station closed in 1867, 30 years later. And in 1915, they restarted the work after the First World War. So this year marks the 110-year anniversary. So the 10th of August, 1825, you would recall, as PB mentioned, the death of the 3 martyrs, which actually puts us to 200 years. The old Transvaal, and this is the area that I believe that Reverend Ketshabile is very passionate about because he has done some work on it. That in its 202-year anniversary this year of the work that was done in the old Transvaal, including what was called then the Bechuana land. This work was led by the Reverend Samuel Broadbent and Thomas Hodgson, who arrived at Makwasi in the Transvaal. 3 years later, were forced to abandon the area, and they moved to Plaatebek near Warrington in 1827, headed by James Archibald. The station moved again in 1833 to Tabanchu. This year marks 192 years of that work. This one in particular, PB, resonates very well with me because when this work was started in Makwasi, my great-great-grandparents came out of Botswana and settled in Makwasi. And Broadbent and others took one of my great-grandparents to Tabanchu, who later, his son became an evangelist. And out of that evangelist, you have this one standing here before you. This report, as I conclude, reminds us that the church continues to serve as the conscience of society. It is our sacred responsibility to carry forward the journey began by the pioneers of our faith, those who laid the foundations of our witness and mission. We are called to preserve the dignity of the church, the integrity of its processes, its leadership, and its spiritual witness. Our aim must be to build a church whose dignity is beyond question, a church that embodies the values it proclaims. As we gather during this conference, we are invited to be a church that executes its decisions with integrity. We must take ourselves seriously by implementing the resolutions of conference and living out our Christian witness through faithful adherence to our doctrines, theology, and spirituality. At the heart of this reflection lies the concept of Missio Dei, the mission of God. It is this divine mission that influences and directs every process, activity, and event within the church. As Reverend Dr. Andrew R. Hardy and Reverend Dr. Dan Yanel affirm, the Missio Dei will seem to be the most important foundation for the purpose and life of the church. If the church seeks to make its concerns the normative measure for formulation of its mission, then it will arguably found its community life based around the concept of a God whose life cycle is best described as loving service expressed as unity, which also welcomes diversity based on acceptance of difference. This profound insight reminds us that the church does not possess the mission, God does. We are participants in God's unfolding work of healing, reconciliation, and transformation. Our community life must reflect this divine rhythm, one of loving service, unity, and radical hospitality. PB, with those 1 or 2 pages that decided to disappear, I present this report to the conference of 2025.
Thank you to the GS for this report. Please move the report then for adoption.
I so move, Presiding Bishop.
Is conference agreed? And whilst we do that, lay President, please move your report for adoption.
Thank you, Madam Pipi and conference. I move the report of the lay President for adoption.
Is conference agreed? Thank you. Right, conference, the report is before us. I'm mindful of our time, but I also don't want to stifle engagement on any critical questions and conversation that may come. And so let me open this opportunity for conference to reflect on the lay President's report and also the report of the General Secretary. Bishop? Thank you. I note those hands. I'll ask you to put them up again in a while.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Bishop, not Vice President. And we need to heal you of that abuse earlier on. PB, this is the greatest day for me. I met some colleagues outside and I said, yeah, the years that I'm left for retirement, I'm excited. Two things. One, the flow from the presiding bishop's address, the input of the lay president, and the thorough work that Umunompi has done is what we need as the method. It is what we need as the Methodist Church. These are leaders who have thought thoroughly about their roles, and you can see they are very intentional about this. Now, what has been the weakness, and I hope at this conference, which follows the Mission Congress, we are going to break what I call the curse, the institutional curse. And the institutional curse is listening to presentations and presentations. It's Reverend Nevana who said doing the same thing and hoping to find a different result. It is Hlonele Kaya class at the Mission Congress who spoke about these things. My proposal is that we, our lay president, from the time he was inducted to now, has been raising things that are important, that are building the institution, its culture, its climate, and its direction. The JS comes in and do that, because when I remember you have given us the outlook vision of where the church is. These are your COOs who are giving us how do we build the institution to reach what you need. It will be foolhardy at the time of the Mission Congress and from the pilgrimage that we repeat the same. I know part of our weakness is creating committees that just generated work and they don't deliver. All this stuff needs a dedicated focus of a small team that is going to look at how to programmatize. By program, I don't mean something long, but how we are going to intervene on these things. You can hear quoting and drawing from the archives of 2014, and the things persist. 10 years from now, a younger GS who's sitting here is going to be quoting Reverend Losaba. A younger lay president will be quoting from our lay president. We can't go that way. I suggest that we look at how we are going to transform the institution based on the data that has been provided by our leaders. I'm happy. I just want you to know that that flow is beautiful, but we can sabotage it by doing nothing about it and only clapping hands.
Now, let us see those hands again. All right. So it's at the back, 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5. Please remember your numbers.
Thank you very much, PBN Conference, and to the GS and the lay president for wonderful reports. To the GS, I was saying to the person that was seated next to me last night as the opening service was ongoing, I don't remember who's that person. I was saying to that person, when I look at the altar there, the Reverend Losaba in this conference looks exactly like his father. And that is not just a simple thing, but it goes in line with our belief as Africans, that those that at some point came before us, they never stop living within us. So that was just an affirmation to say, the senior Mulompe, wherever he is, he's not sleeping, but he's living through you. 1 or 2 points, it will depend on those who are counting. You made reference, GS, to the financial viability, particularly on stationing. And mine comes to say, what is our plan in instances where financial viability compromises mission? Because in most instances, when we speak of station, the huge part of impact is on finances. And many stations, or rather many circuits, that are not able to afford as per what is prescribed financially to be a station, its mission is compromised because of finances. And I'm asking, how is it, or how far has the church went in not perpetuating the gaps between mission that is afforded to the haves and mission that is afforded to the have-nots? The other point, or the other question thereof, is how we have become conniving about stationing. That the way in which we are conniving about stationing has compromised the real mission of the church. And we have got or painted these conniving methods of doing stationing, that when people are asked to account, we will be told of CE. And I don't know where this CE accounts. And every time people are asked to account on matters of stationing, the real answers are not given. And we have continued to be a church that hides under things that are unreal over things that are real. Lastly,
Yes, please wrap up, sir.
I'm wrapping up, hence I said lastly, ma'am.
Yes.
Lastly, the church, the MCSA, has got two previously disadvantaged individuals, and those are women and the youth. And all the time we have received letters that speaks of electing female bishop. And if we are serious and intentional about implementing our reforms, I'm yet to wait for a day where MCO writes a letter and instructs Synod to elect a 20% bishop.
Thank you. Who was number 2? Thank you. Conference, settle. Yes, sir.
Presiding Bishop and Conference, I also want to echo my sentiments.
Conference, please settle.
I also would like to echo the sentiments that were expressed by Bishop of the Limpopo district about the addresses and reports we have received. I, however, also want to invite us as Methodists that the data we are being given and the information we are being given is calling us to have courageous conversations. Courageous conversations in the sense that we do not only receive statistics about how matters are going and how things are going, but we must also be able to stand up and say as Methodist people, this is what we should do in order to address these matters. The first area of courageous conversation we must have, we have heard over and over again that we take resolutions but do not implement them. But there is something further than just implementing the resolutions after we have taken them. We must also at some stage pause, and this is my comment and possibly a question to the GS. We must also pause at one stage and say, after we have implemented some decision for 3 to 5 years, measure the impact of that decision on the church, on the ministry of the church, and on the way in which the church is impacting the world. So not just talking about implementing of resolutions, but also measuring the impact of the resolutions. So we need to get ourselves into that space. And what is the commitment, therefore, that we will have from our church? For example, ma'am, we made a decision a couple of years ago that stationing will not be changed if somebody has only been stationed for less than 3 years. Yet at this point in time, we see people changed within months of arriving at their stations before the 3-year term has even elapsed. And this is becoming a tendency that is unbecoming of a church that is supposed to be caring for the wellness of its clergy and their families. We station somebody in a place, by June, July, we tell them they are moving. And we do not know what the reasons, perhaps, of they are moving, and we do not know what the impact of their moving within 1 year does to their families.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. In the interest of time, please wrap up.
Thank you, ma'am. The other aspect is on the leadership concerns that the GS has raised. And they are real. But we are not having a courageous conversation insofar as the leaders we elect and we nominate as a church. And so these things that come out of the data given by our leaders need to be interrogated so that we can make proper decisions going forward.
Thank you very much. Conference, please do allow me to stop you. I know that there are many hands. Many people want to contribute. So let's try to keep it brief. And when I stop you and interject, just try to wrap it up. All right? Are we agreed on that? Let's find the balance between hearing the voice and managing our time going forward. Right. Where are those hands? Thank you. 3, and then I'm back to this side. Yes, sir. We are now speaking in sentences, not in paragraphs. All right, they're working on it. Approach the one here in the front. Let's see if that works. I think during lunch, IT will have to assist us with these mic issues.
Thank you, Madam PB. I'm going to be short, very short. Kort and Bondach. I've got 2 questions for GS and just a comment for lay president. Let me start with a comment. In 2024, I like to reference always. There was a statement that when we report in a conference, some of the reports are like charging. And I strongly believe, Lay, that today your report was more cumbersome in a sense that it's an administrative and governance one. without any issues of matches or instructions. Going to the question that I came, GS, in your presentation, you talked about statistics be the most decision-making body. And when you articulate issues of cases or litigations or charges or complaints, I was expecting that you would tabulate, just brief, give us the stats so that it give us the light that as a church, how many complaints graphically, whether it's in Mozambique or Molopo or Good Hope, at what level do we have in terms of courts, litigations? Are they in conclusion phase, or are we still, so that whatever skills that we have in a church can come and assist to reduce the problem that we are facing. The second question that I have is, you also explain about the processes of the church. And back of my mind, I've realized that maybe some of these complaints, it's because of there's not clear signage in terms of the application of Methodist Book of Order. It articulates what Brother Tapelo said, the stationing as an animal in the house of the MCSA. How best are we using this book not to become a threat towards articulation of membership, however became a tool that enhances a conducive environment within us as Christians?
Thank you. Before I come to this side, then, let me offer you the opportunity to respond. It might just be helpful, otherwise you lose some of the questions. So over to you, Lay President GS.
Thank you very much, Madam PB and conference. I will take some, and then GS will also take some of the questions as raised. Where does a connectional executive accounts to conference? Connectional executive is a subcommittee of conference. Conference is the final decision-making body, the final arbiter. It is the conference that needs to hold connectional executive accountable, where connectional executive might have been found to have either missed the mark or otherwise. In terms of governance, it is not practical that all of us as conference can be able to execute the work of this conference. Therefore, there are subcommittees of conference, including the connectional executive, as well as other committees of conference like revisions, structures and boundaries subcommittee, CTP, and perhaps too many to count. All of those committees are accountable to conference. I hope I've answered that one. The 4020 resolution is two resolutions of conference 2019 that was held at the Cape of Good Hope. One resolution is on women representation in leadership, and it deals with 40-40. There's a technicality there. It's meant to have perhaps a better expression of this, because then there is a missing 20. Then the following one, representation, it talks to representativity. Tongue twisting for me. It then talks to the 40-20 in our structures. It gives a room for deviation. The shall in the first one, in terms of 40-40, is a should in the next one. And the second one gives a room where there is a deviation for a particular structure to write to the next level of accountability in terms of why there was a deviation. And therefore, if we are to institutionalize transformation in the area of 20%, we have got to deal with that reality. This is found, I think, in the 2020 yearbook. It's number 20 and 21. It's one resolution after another. They are two separate resolutions, and we often refer to them as if it's one. So there is work to do in this specific area. I will possibly take the next one and then pause, give over to the GS. The issues around the statistics, evaluation, assessment of impact regarding the resolutions that are done year on year. This is the work of institutionalizing M&E. How do we institutionalize monitoring and evaluation? And this is part of the content where we were challenged by Shoni at the Mission Congress in terms of clarity, capacity, and care. In terms of habits we create and the organizational culture that we create. And therefore, M&E does indeed, the doc knows, does not happen in a vacuum. The systems that we design give us the results that we have. And therefore, if we are to have a situation where there is an evaluation culture at every level, we have got to institutionalize what happens. We've got to make it regular at every level. It should be an expectation that a CQM receives this report, this accountability. And when it does not happen, CQM must be able to call for accountability by those who are the circuit executive. The same can be duplicated across the structure. And so there's a lot we need to do in terms of making sure that this translates into practice. What I seem to observe is where members of conference, synod, CQM, society leaders meeting seem to only receive and receive and receive. And for some reason, seem to be intimidated by those who are in leadership and not hold us as leadership accountable. And yet, we are elected by you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Lay President. Looking at some of the issues that have been raised, one thing that I could pick up clearly is that there's a lot around issues of stationing, and there's a question on how we use statistics to benefit us as a church, and then also issues around leadership concern. And when it comes to stationing conference, my response is simply that I think what we need to be doing is to assist the local church to understand its role in the stationing process. I think for me that's where the starting point is. That if we could help the local church to come to know what is stationing all about. What I'm discovering I discovered over the years is the fact that Methodist people are convinced that CE stations. Can I repeat that? That my understanding in assessing the situation within our church is that the Methodist people believe very strongly that it is CE that stations. And the second layer to that is that Methodist people have got a belief that the bishop has the power just to change a station as he or she wishes. And when we go to our regulations and processes of stationing, you then realize that actually, lack of a better word, authority in terms of this lies in the circuit. What I understand our process, and please correct me, I'm still new. I'm driving this car with a big L. So if I make a mistake, I'm prepared to be corrected. But my understanding is that when a stationing committee of a district sits, its influence, its business by what they receive from the circuit. Two, my understanding is that when synod deals with stations, let me just start by saying it is a process that has begun from the stationing committee of the district. Being presented, and I want you to hear me well here, being presented for the second time to a circuit that had submitted its own wishes about stationing to the stationing committee. And what that means, the presentation, and maybe I'm going to say what I'm not supposed, I shouldn't be saying too much. Please pinch me if I say a lot. What I understand this to be meaning is that when the stations are presented at a at synod, it is an opportunity that is given to that synod to engage those stations. And if there is a sense of unhappiness in terms of what the stationing committee, not an individual, a stationing committee is presenting, then the synod has got the right to engage that move. What we receive, and Bishop, as Reverend Hensrod, has taught me that when I looked at how he was dealing with stations, what he receives from synod becomes a book that he uses for the July meetings, where now the July meetings will be saying to those who are sitting there, have we done a good accountability in terms of collecting information regarding stationing? And they will be saying, yes, you did well here, but between synod and this, we sat as a stationing committee and this needed to happen, and those things are processed. And one of our way of doing station in the CE is that what we receive, we always make sure that bishops make sure that it's something that comes from the stationing committee of that district, beyond synod. Remember, imagine a presiding bishop stationing somebody in Ofimvaba. She has never been there. She's got no clue what's happening in Ofimvaba. So she cannot even begin to do that. But she relies on the CE relies on the information that it receives. And again, just to add on your response regarding CE and the work that it does, we must also remember that CE does that work on behalf of conference. It is this conference that said, CE, we want you to do this for us. Now I go to the next part, which speaks to a decision that was taken some few years ago regarding 3 years. You are very correct. And I still remember how at one stage, some of the people sitting in this conference were affected by that decision, when their invitations and other things were already be put in place, and we had to say, no, this is how we are doing things. But unfortunately, friends, like I said in my report, we are dealing in most instances with issues of conflict. We are dealing with other issues that are highly personal regarding our agents. I spoke to you also about the whole issue of mismatch as well. So it depends on situations. And I want to assure this conference that when those issues are presented, CE doesn't just take them. Those who present those requests are engaged. And they need to put a case before CE as to why they want to do that. We are doing our best as CE, being instructed by you to make sure that it becomes a 3-year. If it becomes an annual thing, it has cost implications, serious cost implications. CE always asks me, Mr. Paddy asked me, and I messed up the response, and he ate me alive. And I rejoiced at that because she's now helping me to come more alert. But we raised an issue with CE to just make CE aware that just with this year's moves, we are actually having almost 140 moves. We had 111 last year, and it cost us 3.2 million. Now we are sitting at 140. I want to make you do the maths. So that's where we are sitting. And all I'm asking, or probably trying to encourage conference, is that let's go back and just help our people to understand, how stationing has to happen. And it doesn't mean, another thing I need to say, based on just what I've just said. Conference, please note this. When the minister is appointed for 3 years, it doesn't mean at the end of that 3 years that minister has to move. Conference appointment of 3 years is that you are there for 3 years. And if the minister doesn't have an invitation, it doesn't actually say that circuit must move the minister if they are still happy with having that minister in that place. You don't even set an invitation. You can just extend a conference appointment. 3 years doesn't mean you stay here and then move after 3 years. It doesn't mean that.
Thank you very much. Just as I hand over to PB, just to remind conference of our LND 4.61 in terms of every station being subject to annual review by this conference. But also to remind conference of another clause under chapter 7 in terms of the exceptional circumstances. And these two need to be read in combination. 4.61 as well as the clause under 7.12 that makes reference to exceptional circumstances where the current stationing cannot be sustained. Just to point out those two areas. In terms of leadership assessment, lastly, there is good data coming out of the Mission Congress from that discernment group on leadership, governance, and wellness. We are looking forward to that work and see how does this conference package that work in such a way that it can deal with the leadership investments. We note the trials that have been made. We note where there are gaps. There are also recommendations and work that will be reported around Tsietsi Mashinini Fund, as well as suggestions around collaboration and how that could look like, and how we can work it out so that it talks to the issues of leadership investments across the board. Where it does not only focus on undergraduate or first qualifications in the community, but how does it look on issues of postgraduate, as well as making sure that there is continuous formation and investments in this area? I do think those that were raised have been answered, unless I missed something.
The last one for me would be the question on stats around issues of discipline, litigation, and all of that. That information does go beyond CE, because this conference had asked CE to deal with that work. So we do have those stats. So CE is the one that actually looks at them on our behalf.
Thank you very much. Lay President GS, I'm going to deal now with the hands this side, and I will have to move from this item. There was a last hand. Please take the mic, sir. There was a last hand this side, and let me see the hands this side, please. All right, those are the only hands. Put them up again. It will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we move from this item. After you, sir, at the back. I can't see that far, forgive me. Mfuleni, come up, Warden. Thank you.
Madam PB, the conference at large, let me greet you in the wonderful name of my Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Madam PB, I'm very much pleased with the report of the General Secretary of our church. However, my concern
Sir, we can hear. Please come to the one in the front.
The ones right at the back, ma'am, that are too far from the receiver, if they can come either here, then it will be fine.
Thank you so much, Madam PP. My question, I'm very much pleased with the report of the General Secretary of our church, but my question is around the statistics analysis on the personal statistic report. There are no members of the order there. They are not part of our church. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Let's come this side. Number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Over to you, ma'am.
All protocols observed. Ma'am, I also want to affirm your report and your leadership. Thank you for the reports presented to us. I think I just want to say that
Let's settle conference.
there is just one concern. While I think it is excellent that we talk about the accountability of ourselves as an institution, language is a powerful thing. And we are more than an institution. We are a movement of disciples. And so I would hope that we would begin to use language like sacrificial discipleship and terms like that, so that when we receive these, which I would term administrative reports correctly, but we use a term that may actually move us. I celebrate the fact we are told that the new book of order would be helping us. We remember it's a book of order. But the more we add regulations, it doesn't solve many of our problems. It gives us order, and we affirm that. However, if we do not work on issues of the heart, we are a heart people, if our hearts are far from God. So I just want to affirm that one. The second one in our language is we must remember that Jesus was the worst CEO in history. Because he said, if you're going to follow me, you're going to take up your cross, and you're going to deny, you're going to die. He reminded us that you will be persecuted. And we read in the scriptures, people turned away from him. And I think it's that kind of radical discipleship language we should be using. Let us be persecuted for the right thing. And that is for picking up our cross. All these matters, were we to live closer to Christ, we would do so. And lastly, thank you for affirming the historical work, because it brings the story in. And thank you for reminding us of the oldest mission station. Next year, in our quest and on the journey of and using the pilgrimage stones, you may have noticed when we came forward, we had an Immaculate person place our stone. Because next year during the Wesley Feast, we are building a memorial from all our stones. And we are hoping with our stats, which says we're about 4,000 members, we will lay 4,000 symbolic stones in a new altar next to that Lily Fontaine, a Bethel's Clip. We intend doing that, and so we give notice at this district.
Thank you. Conference. Sorry, ma'am. Conference, it's a bit noisy, which makes it difficult to follow. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for that contribution. 2, 3, 4.
PBI rise on PBI rise, I think, on the Gen 6 report, where he made reference to the application of chapter 11 of the Book of Order. And mine there is restlessness on the composition of the committees from DDR to DDC, which requires that they should have legal background. And that makes those committees apply themselves as if they are a court of law. And the defendant is not allowed to have legal representation, which then affects judgment and sanction as if they were in a court of law. And it also compromises the spirit of 11.1. I understand that it has just been revised, and I wish that that could be looked at, because that might just be the problem, which then impacts the application of process in that regard. And unfortunately, many people fall victim of that mishap in there as I perceive it. The second one is on the issue of social media. It is my uncomfortable observation that social media now seems to become the determinant of our decision making in reacting to what happens there at the expense of principle, ethics, polity, and everything that has to do, because we seem to become reactive to that. And that makes us acceptable to the fact that if we may take decisions as a result of what happens on social media, what if some of us manipulate that space to reach to a particular end and come to cry victim of what they initiated? So we need to be careful of how we react to social media, and we need to allow ourselves to stick, or to rather be as grounded enough as possible to apply our rules and apply our policies irrespective. Reports don't come because we are afraid that they will be leaked to social media. Information is not disseminated enough because we are afraid that it will be leaked into social media. And decisions that affect people's lives are taken seemingly reactive to what had happened to social media. And I suspect that space is seriously manipulated nowadays. And those of us who may cry victim of that may just be instigators.
To the presiding bishop and conference at large, I'm glad Mfundisi Kuruba has touched on a matter that I also wanted to briefly comment on, which is social media. But I won't repeat what he has just said. My first question perhaps is to the lay president. If you were to look at most of his addresses, they all have this idiosyncratic nature, or rather this distinct feature of always talking about the collapse, of governance. Can I ask, what could be the major contributing factors to this governance crisis that we currently face? And Madam Presiding Bishop, through you, can I just be indulged and be taken to a sense of comfort? The lay president made a lot of recommendations, especially with regards to the amendment of the Book of Order. Can I just be assured that that is before the Resolutions Committee? Thank you.
The final one from this side, there was a number 4.
Thank you, ma'am. Firstly, just to raise a concern about the reports that come after the presentations. I'm not so sure if that's it's my first time also, Bishop, PB. Maybe it's a precedence that has been there, but it makes things difficult to listen and have to find things to contribute and engage after the fact. So I would request that all the reports that are going to be engaged, at least they come before the presentations. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all those questions and contributions. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam PB and conference. We have struggled with our IT in terms of the server and the sharing of some of the information, particularly the reports. We apologize to the members of conference for all the delays and the glitches that some of the reports that should have been received before presented are actually received after. Even when at some point an announcement was made that a report has been disseminated, half of conference still approach the table to say we have not yet received. And so it looks like there's been issues there. Now, that's not the only issue, but also we have a specific situation this conference where there was CE, Mission Congress, and conference back to back, requiring the same leadership in terms of the various areas. Having said all of that, we apologize for all of those delays. We are going to have to find a better way of communicating this information. The point around what are the contributing factors around the collapse of governance is myriad of issues. Sometimes power struggles, sometimes the history, as much as it can help us if we learn from it, but sometimes we have a situation in some circuits where one administration pushes out another administration, which becomes very unhelpful. There are issues around institutional memory and knowledge management, where every circuit executive starts afresh. There are no handing overs. It overlaps to even finances, where every executive opens a new bank account because those who have left the office were not ready to leave the office. So there's a myriad of issues. But I want to stick to the famous one I normally refer to, the doctrine of separation of powers, where governing bodies are not clear of their responsibility to hold those in leadership accountable. We have a situation where the executive decides, the executive executes. The way our structure is, executives can take process decisions. But when it comes to making the resolution, CQM is there. Then there is an executive that executes. And we have collapsed this into one. 9 out of 10 conflicts that we have in the life of the church, governance has collapsed in that area. Apologies, I'm not sure what suddenly caused that. I will leave it. GS said he will add where there are gaps. Social media issues, I am not best to comment on all of these issues, but I do think the point has been raised, and I do think all the leadership present here, particularly the members of the Connectional Executive, could assist. The idea is that we have a social media policy, and we have had communications director invited in some of our synods. And a lot of work has gone into revising that policy. However, there are still gaps in terms of ethics and the code of conduct. What happened when the code of conduct, there has been a breach? We seem to be unclear. This is an issue on chapter 11 with some of the amendments that we need to do. There is also some body of work coming out, which I'm asking conference to take note of for tomorrow's commissions. That is coming out from the Mission Congress in terms of the issues of work ethic, the issues around code of conduct, and all of that work. How best do we respond to the elephant in the room in terms of such issues? I do not think I have exhausted this question. Perhaps there is more to be added by the leadership. The issues around the composition of committees, this is before us on the Commission on L&D. The top table has been meeting on many of these issues, and so there is thinking in terms of how best do we process them through the conference. So there is a specific commission that whose chair or convener has been mentioned when the appointments were done here. These issues are before us, specifically the qualifications of DDR. How do we deal with DDRs that are not functioning? How do we deal with DDRs who have conflict of interest? How do we deal with timelines that we always miss? And so there are recommendations there. There is feedback. The key proposals there include establishing a registry where you could have one DDR chairing a team, not one individual, so that you deal with the issues of conflict of interest. There is a 30-page document that will be in that commission and to deal with the detail. And I'm not sure what the processing has been, but CE has received that document. And those who are facilitating have received the document. We have a responsibility to assist the church through some of these gaps. that you have raised. Maybe let me end here and allow GS to take the rest of the questions. You are covered.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that interesting conversation that I believe strengthens our work and how we move forward as we continue to reform the church on this pilgrimage of renewal. All right, conference, the time now is 1 o'clock or 5 to 1. The kitchen is ready and lunch is served from 1 to 2. Just to say to us that we know of the conference resolution around single-use plastic bottles, and we know this is not environmentally sustainable or friendly. It would seem there has been glitches this morning with our water dispenser and so on. And so we will look into that matter so that there isn't a repeat of this. And you would have to get water from the water well. You'll have to get water from the well. All right. So please forgive us for that. We do have to exemplify what we say. And so this is in one of the areas that we will do better going forward. GS, any notices? There was an important question that was raised around the recommendations that are found in the lay president's report in the light of the moratorium that we've had around resolutions from districts. However, we recognize that some resolutions, recommendations may emanate from discussions, from reports, and we wouldn't want that work to be dropped. And so indeed, emanating from that report, without going back on our decision, we cannot let that fall. And so that work will go through to Resolutions Committee for processing. Right, we now then break for lunch and return at 2. And I will ask a delegate from Mulopo. Mulopo, one of your delegates, to come and pray and bless the food for us. And at 5 to 2, we return. We are behind schedule, so let us be punctual. Mulopo delegate, come pray. Let us be still as we pray and bless the food.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Almighty God, we come before you at this time. We give thanks that you have led us up to this point. And as we break now for lunch, be with us. Bless the food that you are about to receive. Bless the hands that make them. And bless the bodies that are going to receive. In Christ's name, amen.
2 o'clock. Enjoy your lunch.